In this video walkthrough, we're going to process this shot's colours and tones in Photoshop Elements 9 to create the look of old Velvia film. And here we have a shot that's got the Velvia makeover. Velvia film was produced by Fujifilm, and it gave rich, oversaturated colours, a nice smooth grain, and an amazing high contrast. So we've got lovely clipped shadows and very bright highlights, which makes all the details pop out thanks to the extremes in colours and tones. Now our start image is a Nikon RAW file called velviabefore.nef. That's a Nikon RAW file, and different cameras use different types of processing technique to create their RAW images. And if you haven't got the latest camera RAW editor, you probably won't be able to open this Nikon start file. So what you need to do is to update your camera RAW editor, and it's very easy to do now. You just go to Help, go down to Updates, and you'll be able to see that we've got the Update Manager appearing. There you go. The Adobe Application Manager. You can then choose what version you want to update, click Update, and you need to close your original version of Photoshop for the update to work, and you'll then have the latest version of the Camera Raw editor, and you should be able to open up our start image without any hassle. But I've already got the latest version, so what I'm going to do is just drag velviabefore.nef into Photoshop, and it will open up automatically into the Adobe Camera Raw editor, as you'll see in just a tick. Minimize that now, and here we have Camera Raw 6.4.1. That's the latest version. So we're going to start off in the RAW editor by getting the colours and tones to look their best, get a nice neutral looking shot with a better exposure. And to make sure we get all the colour information that we can, make sure that depth is set to 16 bits per channel. Let's kick off by having a quick look at the handy histogram we have up here, and you can see the brightest pixels actually fizzle out well before the far right end, and that means that the highlights are quite weak and the shot is an underexposed image. So what we need to do is boost exposure by dragging this slider here to around about plus 60 just to brighten up the shot and get these histogram pixels to slide more towards the right for a healthy exposure. You can always see the before and after by clicking on preview, and already the shot's looking a bit better. Now you can see from the histogram we've got some black shadows at the far left, some bright highlights at the far right, but the image consists mostly of midtones. But as our midtone contrast is fairly flat, we're losing some of the delicate details in these midtone areas. Let me just grab the zoom tool and click to zoom in for a closer look at these midtones in the ocean here. If I drag clarity to the right, you can see that the contrast changes slightly and you've got more delicate midtone detail. Go to the left again, it's much flatter, to the right, and you've got much more delicate detail revealed there. So plus 50 should give you an improved contrast in your midtones and reveal some of the scene's more subtle textures. Let's right click to go to Fit on View to see the shot as a whole, and we can just enhance the colours a bit more by pushing Vibrance up to the right here to around about 43, and that helps to boost the weaker colours without oversaturating the existing stronger colours. Now Velvia produced prints are nice and sharp, so let's just right click and go to 100% to see the actual detail. And if I just move up to here using the hand tool, which you can get by holding the spacebar, you can see it's a little bit soft in the background. So we need to go to the Details tab to get it looking nice and sharp. So the first thing to do is to set the amount to around about 64%. You can do that by typing in a value like so. Now by sharpening the shot with the amount slider, you reveal a little bit more picture noise, so we want to keep that down a little bit, and we can do that by dragging detail to the right to around about 37, and that helps us get a balance between the noise that we can see and the detail that has nice sharp pixels. Talking of noise, we can reduce any color noise by dragging this slider to the right to 100, and luminance noise we've got to be careful with because we could smooth out our sharpened pixels, so we'll take that to around about 13 for a subtle luminance noise reduction. So we've used the Camera Raw editor to get the start image looking nice and neutral to overcome any tonal and color problems that we had initially. We can now move into the standard Photoshop Elements 9 editor to start adding our creative color effects. So click on Open Image to see the shot in the standard Photoshop Elements 9 editor. Now bear in mind that we've got a 16 bits per channel image here, which means that some of the tools aren't available to us in the main menu. So what we need to do is go to Image, change mode back down to 8 bits per channel, just so we can use all of the tools in the menu at the top here. Before we get creative with colour and tone, let's just fix this vignetted sky which is darkening towards the top right corner. And to do that we need the Layers palette, so let's click to select that, pop that up to the top, and duplicate the layer by dragging it to the Create New Layer icon like so. So to lighten up this darkened corner, pop up to Filter and go to Correct Camera Distortion and change the vignette amount to 29 by typing in the value like so. You can also push the midpoint out a little bit more towards the edge by changing this midpoint to 74. And that will lighten up the top corner there and make it much brighter. Click OK to apply the change, and you'll see that while we've lightened this top right corner, we've also lightened the top left corner as well. So we need to selectively mask this layer so that this corner stays as it was, but this corner can be brighter. So let's click on here to select it, click here to add a layer mask, and then click on the mask to target it. Press Ctrl I to inverse the mask. The mask is now making this layer disappear totally, and then what we can do is grab the brush tool, set foreground color to white by clicking here, and then choose a nice large brush of 300. Take the opacity to around about 30% to make it semi-transparent. That gives us a nice grey brush tip. And now you can click on the mask and start to spray that grey tip over the top section to reveal some of the top layer where we corrected the sky using Correct Camera Distortion. So we've now got a lighter section at the top right here. Let me turn that on and off so you can see there's the before, there's the underneath layer. Now we're seeing a little bit of this top layer, and that's the lighter area that's fixing that vignetted corner, and we now have a much more evenly exposed sky. Grab the Magic Wand tool, set tolerance to 41 and make sure contiguous is ticked, and then click to start selecting the sky. If I shift click, I can add to the selection, and because we've got contiguous ticked, it's only collecting areas that are linked to the initially sampled pixels, and that stops it selecting the blue in the sea, for example. Once the sky is selected, we can click here to create a levels adjustment layer. We can dock that to the bottom of the layers palette when the blue line appears, let go, and they're now floating around together. And the cool thing is the selections created a mask, and now the white areas will be changed when we adjust the levels, but the black areas, the rest of the scene, will be protected from any adjustments. Now the cool thing about levels is we can tweak the colours and tones of our selected area, the sky, and we can do that by adjusting individual colour channels. So let's kick off by going to red, and if you click here we can then lighten the grey midtone slider to around about 1.22, and that will give us a little bit of a hint of magenta to the sky. There's the before, there's the after. You can see there's a bit of a colour tweak happening in the sky area. So you can type in these values if you find it too fiddly to get with the slider. Let's go to greens now and tweak the greens channel, and you can type in the grey midtone value of 0.98, and then we'll go down to the blues and darken the midtones by dragging this to the right again, and we'll go to about 0.84 just to tweak the blues. If I turn this on and off, you can see the changes there now in the tones and the colours. And finally we'll do a global change by going to RGB, and we'll set this to a black of 31 just to darken the blacks. There you go, and let's drag the highlight slider to the left to brighten up the highlights in the shot to around about 223 or so, and that will give us a nice contrast change as well as the colour tweaking we did with the individual channels. So there's the before, rather bland and flat, and there's the after, a little bit more interesting texture detail there now, and we can see the clouds more clearly too. This distant coastal feature is rather underexposed, so let's just tweak that selectively by grabbing the quick selection tool. You can click here to start a new selection, and then click and spray over this object here to try and select that. And you may find it also selects bits of sky and the sea, so you can fine tune that by taking the subtract from selection icon and just clicking and spraying under the problem areas, and finally just mop up these pixels here until this distant island is selected. So there's our completed selection. If we now click on this adjustment layer icon and add levels, you'll see a mask is going to allow us to target the island without changing the rest of the shot. And we can now brighten up the contrast by dragging this slider to the left. That brightens the highlights to around about 189 should do the trick. There we go. And we can darken the shadows by taking this to around about 14 and get a much better looking contrast on the island. Turn this off to see the before, turn it on again, and there's the new island contrast. To produce some more vibrant Velvia style colours, let's add a new hue saturation adjustment layer by clicking here, and we can boost the master saturation up to around about 35 to get much more vivid looking colours. We can then tweak the hue of the yellows just to make them a little bit more greener to create a more lush looking island, and to do that change it to yellows and drag hue to about +13, and that just turns some of the yellows a more greener hue just to enhance this distant island. Let's turn that off. There's the before, and turn it on again to see the Velvia version. Now, to merge all of these layers together in a flattened version, but preserve the layers at the same time, we need to press Shift, Control, Alt, and E, all at the same time, and that gives you a flattened version. You can then remove the colour from it by going to Enhance, Adjust Colour, Remove Colour, and then if you change the blending mode to Soft Light, you get these lovely high contrast tones with clip shadows and overexposed highlights, which is a very Velvia type property. There we go. Now let's just press Ctrl plus a couple of times to zoom in for a closer look at the water. And while the clipped highlights are working nicely here on the rock, we are losing a little bit of texture detail there. So what I'm going to do is add a layer mask to this top layer. Then if I pop to the brush tool here, set it to a nice large size of 300 pixels, set opacity to around about 45% or so, I can then set foreground color to black, click on the mask to target it, and if I click and spray over this area here, I can restore some of the blown out highlights and reveal more detail while still preserving the tonal change on the layer as a whole. So I'm just going to tweak that. Turn the adjustment layers back on again. So there's the before and there's the after. We've still got that nice high contrast now, but we're revealing a wee bit more detail in these highlights. Now if we zoom in, we can see there's quite a lot of grain in the sky, and Velvia prints tend to have a very fine grain. So what we can do is scroll down to the Levels 1 Adjustment Layers Mask, Control click on the mask to reactivate that selection, and then scroll down to the background layer where most of our image is, and go to Filter. I'll go down to Noise and choose Reduce Noise. And up pops the Reduce Noise window, set strength to 8, and then you can see if I click, there's the before, very noisy, there's the after, much smoother. And because of that selection that we created, we're just applying this to the top section where the sky is, and we're smoothing out some of that area there, while keeping the noise and the detail and all the sharpness in the rest of the shot. But noise is much more noticeable in smooth parts of sky, so it's good to target and reduce noise in these particular areas. And finally, don't forget to click on background copy, because there's a little bit of sky there as well we need to reduce the noise from. Let me just move that down there, and you can see that the noise is at the top right. And then if you just Control F to apply the last used filter, that will smooth out the noise in this section of the shot as well to complete the edit. There we go, smooth sky all round there now. Control D to deselect, right click with the zoom tool, fit on screen, and there's our finished Velvia print.